this is called Creative Memoirs, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it a little later in the presentation. So I go by CicelyRenee, born CicelyRenee Carr, and I was born and raised in Minneapolis, South Side. Went to North High School, and graduated so long ago, almost 20 years. Oh my gosh. I don't feel that old. No, just kidding. But anyways, born and raised in Minneapolis, and then I was recruited to go to school at Southwest Minnesota State University. And I only stayed there for part of my undergrad degree. And so like it was a struggle being Black at SMSU, especially a long time ago. There was just not a lot of resources that were readily available to students that look like me. And there was a lot of stuff happening. And I was just like, you know what, I might have to transfer. And then I also wasn't prepared to go to college. I just didn't know how to study, I guess. And it's like, you know what, I need to transfer. So I was like failing classes and partying. And I was really from under a rock. And then I go to college, and then all of a sudden my mom was not there and I'm just doing my thing. So I was like, you know what, I need to go because this is not I need some structure. Anyways, and so then I went back I went back home to Minneapolis and went to school at Metro State and got my business degree there. And then I did go there for 1 year of my grad year. I did a fellowship, and I only lasted a year because there was a lot of drama for some reason. I don't know. But now I live in Dallas, Texas, and I've been here for about 7 years. And it's really cool. I've had a lot of great experiences. I moved out here, had some friends, but didn't have a job. It was just like, we're literally starting over. And it has been a really good, change for me. And so I taught high school, ELAR and SPED, and how I got into that was during my undergrad. At the end of my undergrad, I went and moved to Miami. And I worked City Year, which is an AmeriCorps program. We worked in the really low income areas and teaching them literacy. So a lot of the students were like 5 years behind. And so we were teaching literacy and doing after school programs. And then I went to go get my master's degree in education because I absolutely loved it. And then had a passion for like English and special ed. And then I resigned. I taught for 5 years, certified. And then I opened a bookstore. And so I was like, and it is a nonprofit. I still have the nonprofit status, but it is no longer a bookstore, unfortunately. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I am now currently like a full-time creativepreneur. I'm a college and career coach for high school students and their families. I'm an artist, an author, educator, lifelong educator. And yeah, I think that's pretty good about me. All right. So why I opened a bookstore, okay? So one of the things, I don't know. So like the theme of this seminar or weekend is the power in your truth, right? Something like that. Do I have it right?
Power of truth telling, I think, yeah.
Power of truth telling. Okay, awesome. Yes, and so I, struggle with my voice. I got in trouble all the time for talking in school. That was the only thing I got in trouble for, was talking. And I'm just like, what is going on? So I stopped talking, right? I didn't have any educators to kind of like cultivate that gift. I'm like, I could have been a journalist. I could have been, all these things, but you told me to stop talking and I got in trouble for it, right? And then I get into a relationship, marriage, where every time I spoke, it was like he shut me down. Like there was that ex-marriage, divorce. And so like I struggled to really speak my truth. And I'm just like, what is going on? And so then also thinking about, culture, Black voices, Black and Indigenous BIPOC, right? And so there's a lot of censorship and erasure. Like I just remember seeing a lot of like hashtags being eliminated. Like if you said anything, you will not be in the algorithms, they'll shut you down, or you get kicked off, or go to Facebook jail or whatever for speaking your truth. And I mean, when I say truth, I don't mean anything that's hate filled. It's your truth, your honest to God truth, that what you're living, your lens, your lane, but not like anything that speaks hate or any of that. And so I just felt like I was like, this is wrong. And just thinking about like the past where, Black people who were enslaved, they could not read or write, right? Because there's power in that. Once you get those vocab, those words, you get that confidence, you build that, then it's just like it changes your life, it empowers you, right? And so I was just like, you know what? That's one of the reasons why I taught English, is because I believe in the power of words. A lot of my students were English as a second language, Spanish speaking mostly. And they were, of course, way behind because they spoke English or Spanish, right? And so they would get in a lot of fights because they didn't know how to really communicate effectively to get their point across. And then they would just shut down. And I'm just like, you know what? We need to empower you. We need to read empowering books, get your mind growing. And it was a struggle because when you're in school, I taught a tested subject. So it was not reading for pleasure. It was always reading to pass a test, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm over this. And so I resigned to open the bookstore. And so with this bookstore, the goal was to empower BIPOC voices and creatives. So all the books on the shelves were either Black authors, Hispanic authors, Asian authors, and we just provided that space for people because we wanted representation, right? We wanted to go somewhere and see something on the shelf that looked and resembled us, right? And so that was one of the reasons why I opened the bookstore. But before the bookstore, it was like a zine. Has anybody heard of a zine before? Yes, so zines are like bae. Like I learned about zines at a very young age, right? And I just felt like, self-publish, right? You put whatever you want out there without people telling you, that it's wrong or whatever, right? And so I went to this conference called AWP, which is like authors, writers, associations for writers, programs, all of that, right? And so they had like the marketplace, and there are a lot of publications and presses, but it just seemed like it was tailored to one group of people. And I'm just like, why aren't there any other voices out there? And I was just like, okay, we're gonna make this zine, we're gonna make this little small publication and promote BIPOC voices. And so I published two, one book form and then one online, where we shared voices. There was artists, there were short stories, poetry, all of that. And I just wanted to put that out there, be published, put your works out there without me saying, yeah, no, we don't want that, or, all of that. And then also, I just wanted to have a community gathering space where people can come together in a safe space. I'm not the clubbing type. I don't like being out, just shopping all the time. I just wanted a space where I can come and be safe and read and, commune with other people. And so that is why I opened the bookstore. And I was super sad when I had to close it, due to just funding. The mall that I was in was just dying. And supposedly all malls are dying. I don't know. I don't go to many malls. But it needed a new space. But until I find a new space, I'm just kind of in this limbo space right now. But that is why I opened the bookstore. All right. So this is like an interactive, presentation. So if you guys have any questions or comments, discussion based, I'm not providing no lecture. This is back and forth. Okay. So please ask questions, comments, whatever you want, okay? So any thoughts so far about like my bookstore or just in general what I'm saying? What are you guys thinking? I saw a hand. No? Was that Jimmy?
Thomas.
Oh, Thomas. Okay, it disappeared.
Sorry,
Okay.
just didn't want to make sure I didn't cut anybody else off. Have you been back to AWP? I mean, it's been a lot of years since I was there. And I was kind of young and stupid at the time when I was there, so I didn't really have the eyes to even see how privileged the marketplace and the publisher floor was. But has it changed at all? If you've been back, is it better?
So it's getting better. So I went to the San Antonio one, which was right when the COVID happened. And so a lot of people didn't show up either. So there's a lot of marketplace, like there's a lot of vendors, but a lot of people didn't show up either. But and then I spoke on a panel last year, but it was only virtual. So I don't know what it looked like. And I'm trying to go back this year. So we'll see if that happens. That is the plan. I love AWP, especially I love writing. I love being in that vicinity. I guess another issue that I kind of had with AWP is just like, I didn't go to school for English. And so a lot of people went and got their MFAs, and it was more of like, a click, like what school did you go to get your MFA? And I'm like, I didn't get it. I just love writing. Like, I still feel like I should be able to get published despite not having an MFA. And so that was another reason why I was doing this press, because I'm just like, yo, people still have their truth, their gifts, their skills, and they should be able to share with the world, even if they didn't get an MFA. And so I was like, okay. But yeah, yep. All right. So we're getting into storytelling. So I feel like it is super important to tell stories of your history, tell your children's children. Unfortunately for me, I don't know much about my history at all. There is nothing documented. And I'm just like, my grandfather is living. He's like, I didn't meet my grandmother. She died before I was born. And so it was more of like, it was really weird. Like there were some stories, but even my mom, they didn't really talk about the past either. So I'm just like, what do I know about my family? Like, what's going on? Like, how can we keep these memories alive? And so I was just like, we need to pass this down. I feel like, the world or United States or whatever is, has cut off a lot of history. Like we don't know a lot. So how are we going to continue passing this down from, generation to generation? And I was just speaking to a group of women talk about journaling and then also creative writing and leaving a legacy for their children. And I'm like, how do you guys remember stories? They said, we just talk about them over and over. But the thing about that is like things get exaggerated. You lose details because the more things are told, like it feels like people put their little spin on it, right? And so it's like, how close to the truth is it, right? So I just was like, man, we need to figure out a way to document this in an easy way. Because a lot of people are like, memoir? That is probably, I can't write a memoir, right? And I'm just like, we're going to do this creatively. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, we're going to figure this out. We're going to do, creative memoirs. And so I don't want people to feel so like stressed out about like writing a whole book. I'm like, you can write a whole book, but it doesn't have to be like 365 pages, filled word. Like that is intimidating. And I don't want this to be an intimidating process. So real quick, how do you guys keep stories alive, generation to generation? Yes, let me know. And do you have you thought about that?
So like, at least for me culturally, between like being African American and Indigenous, it's totally verbal. Like there's not a lot of written history. We joke, one of my youngest cousins, because until my baby cousins were born, I was the youngest. And one of my youngest cousins has now kind of taken up the mantle of being like our family's historian kind of. And so she's the one, and she's young, she's like 20 years old, but she's like super ingrained into figuring out who's related to who and where are they from. And she started like an ancestry for our family. And like, so she's kind of that new generation connection piece. Before that, yeah, that was just like a familial thing where there was this one person who definitely knew everything there was to know about the family. And when that person passed, these are just empty names to me now, you know? I don't know who these people are.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And so we have a historian in our family, but he's not like sharing the information to everybody. It's just like he's keeping it all to himself. And I'm just like, how we gonna get this out? And I'm gonna tell you about that in one of my ways to share that information and yeah, later on. But yes, yeah, like I'm like, I want to know the stories. I want to know about my grandparents and and so I'm like, and so I
Paco
did
said he captures his in poetry. He dropped that in the chat.
say that again.
Brian Paco said he captures some history and poetry.
Yes, I love it. I love it. That's actually one of the ways I'm gonna tell y'all too. So I love poetry. Awesome, awesome. All right. So when it comes to creative memoirs, I just was like, so I'm a creative. I like art, I love music, I love, just everything creative, right? And so I didn't want to, intimidate people with writing a whole like big old book of like a memoir. And so I was just like, well, we can do short stuff. So like, micro memoirs or, and I'm gonna give you three of my favorite ones. I teach a class called Creative Memoirs, and we go into detail about each one. And then we do the whole process. And then I actually help people publish these if they want to publish it and sell it or just have it printed, to give to the family. And so you think about creative memoirs, it's all about themes in your life. So a memoir isn't like an autobiography, right? It doesn't it could have bits and pieces from your whole entire life, but it focuses on specific themes and how you live through it or journey through it. So I love focusing on themes. And so like, what are some themes that you can think of off the top of your head that people usually write about?
Like their childhood.
Childhood, yeah. And then with childhood, it could be like what is called coming of age stories. What else? We could talk about we got moving and adjusting. Yes, that's a really good one. Like that whole transitioning and life is all about moving and adjusting, but how do you look at it, right?
I think triumph too, like
yeah.
the process of overcoming, like the sort of how one like comes to power, sort of whatever that means for them personally, is very frequent.
Oh yes, oh yes. What else? What else? I have a whole like list. And so I have an ebook for this class too.
Crystal said dealing with grief in the chat.
Oh yeah, that is huge. Grief, finding your voice or power. Yep. I love that. I love that. I started a memoir, but I never finished it. And then I'm like, do I really want to write this? Mine was going to be called Wine and Watercolor. And it talked about how I used art for healing after like a divorce and just a whole bunch of different things. And it was so beautiful. And I was just like, I don't know why I didn't finish it, but it's okay. It's all good. Yes, I love that. So yeah, some themes. All right. So let's look at some of my favorite ways. So how many of you guys do a lot of family food functions? Like you have like a special dish. Yeah, yes. So like I was thinking about sweet potato pie, and I was just reflecting on all the memories of sweet potato pie. Like my grandmother made these amazing sweet potato pies. She made little small ones. And I would probably talk a lot about my grandmother with the sweet potato pie and how she just made the whole world just a sweeter place because of her pies and the stories. I remember, so when I was in Marshall, Minnesota, I was actually the BSU president my second year of school. And we put together a soul food festival. And I asked my grandmother for the recipe. Did she give it to me? Raise your hand if you think she gave it. No, she did not give it to me. I was like, what in the world? Anyways, she did ship some sweet potato pie, the filling, and froze it to SMSU, but did I get it? I did not get it either. So she spent all this money. And then I ended up having to make the sweet potatoes. I just went online. They weren't pretty, but they tasted pretty good. But it was just like, so I would tell about that story too. So family recipes, stories, you know, things that you remember. Food is, food is a cultural thing for me. Let's see, my family has a collection of recipes and a family cookbook with short tellings of past. Yes, see that exactly. That is exactly how it goes. And so I love that. So how do you have many copies of it, or is it just that one book, Brian Paco?
They made like a whole bunch of copies and you put down $10. So I have a copy and like all my siblings do, but it's like an extended family. So it's like my grandma's like all that, you know, like that level, couple generations.
Yes. See, I love that. See, y'all know, I love this. I love it. Yeah, family recipes are huge and stories about that. And I was like, maybe you could, you know, collect stories from different people that reflected that recipe or wanted to talk about that specific recipe. Yeah. What are your thoughts about family recipes and turning that into like a memoir? You think that would be cool? I think so.
I know to me that is 1,000% something that I should do because our family is so multicultural that like it would speak to so many different facets of the family, from my husband's like Norwegian heritage to my Afro-Indigenous heritage to our historical move from the Bayou South up into the north, and how food has changed for our family from hoghead cheese and chitlins to here we are now where I have a mean hot dish, tater tot hot dish recipe that I'm very proud of. So incorporating that alone just would speak to the lineage and the travel and the change for our family.
I love that. I love that. And so I live in Texas, and there are some Southern folks. I asked them, I was like, do you know what hot dish means? And they were like, what is hot dish? And I was like, yeah, it's a Minnesota thing, a Midwest thing. But yes, that's hilarious. I love it. Hot dish is so Minnesota. Oh my gosh. And then I tried it. So I got talked about so bad with my accent. And so I really worked on getting rid of my Minnesota accent. But the only word that I say that it sounds Minnesotan is when I say Minnesota. So that is hilarious. That's the only word. They're like, I'm like, we're just gonna not have an accent. I don't know. It's funny. It's funny. All right. So we have family recipes. Next, let's see. All right. So this is what I'm going to start implementing in my family. We have a huge family and we don't really know each other. Like, we are so far removed. We're in so many different parts of the country, maybe even the world. I don't know. And so I'm thinking a family newsletter. So I plan on doing it twice a year, right? So we talk about, and I'm going to focus on the different names, the different people, and putting together a collective, because I'm like, I'm still related to the Turners, I'm related to the Sellers, I'm related to the Pearsons, I'm related, like there's so many different last names, but like who's who, like what, and just being able to have that, you know, like how are we related, and keeping that together, because I'm like, the further we get, it seems like the longer time goes, the further apart we are. So I'm just like, I feel like people were super close, you know, at a long, like 2 generations ago, and then now you have all these cousins and they just getting bigger, like spread out, and I'm just like, we got to figure out how to keep us together. And so I know we want my family. I don't know about your family, but we do not do like family reunions. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, why aren't we doing this? And so maybe this creative memoir, this passion project has stemmed or was birthed because I'm like, I don't know my history, right? And I'm just like, I feel like I'm not the only one, but I feel like some people are really a lot more connected than we are. And I'm just like, we got to change that. We got to change that. We need to figure out who we are and stay connected. Because I love family. I love being able to leave a legacy for people. Yes, Miss Joyce.
I feel like it gets hard, either depending on like historical context of like broken families for BIPOC individuals, or just large families to have that sort of connection. Like if I just look at my history, I'm only 2 generations removed from sharecropping in the South. And so it's really hard for me to find that information of who I'm related to. So, we're 3 generations back from my great uncle was buried alive for trying to go to school in Mississippi, so it's after that, how am I supposed to know who I'm related to,
Exactly. And then when we get those family historians, they need to document that. I'm like, so we have Facebook now. People are always posting on Facebook photos, but they're not really going into detail about things. And I'm just like, what if Facebook just disappeared? What are you going to do with all that information? Where are those photos going to go? Like, how are we going to, immortalize, our family for generations? Because I'm like, I don't know how long Facebook is going to last. I don't know. It's been here for a while, but I just feel like things will get outdated. And it's just like our history will never be outdated. So how do we keep that together? And so I was like, oh, we really need to do a family newsletter. And so my grandparents on my dad's side of the family, they would just send out a yearly letter. But I haven't seen that letter in probably like 8 years. So I'm like, what happened? Who was writing that? What's going on? And so just being up to date, like with people, what they're doing, I'm just like, we need to stay connected. I don't know. I'm huge on family and, being aware and being able to support my people and just learn from my past. But yeah, so that is a family newsletter. Do you guys do family newsletters? No? Do you think that would be a cool thing to do? Yeah. Do you feel like you would do this? And like you don't have to no, you don't. No. Okay. That's cool. That's all right. Yes. All right. Yep. And so I'm like, my life is Canva is based. So I would probably do my whole newsletter on Canva and then just send a link to families and they can print it themselves. Or, I know how to publish and have it put in a book. Canva is life. Life is Canva. Yes, I have so much conflict and turmoil with my family. They would not want me to author the family newsletter. I'm like, this, I'm like, oh, Thomas, get off. No, stop sharing, stop. Thomas, no. I feel you. And you definitely have to be careful with who's in charge with stuff because it could be really biased, right? It could be they could favor a certain group over the other. And so I know my family, so my last name is Carr, and I have a tight-knit group, but we also have a lot of Carrs that are not as close. And so that has been an issue where it's like, how do we stay, and that's the conflict and turmoil because we are a lot of people, you have different people in your family, right? Like some people you hang out with, the similarities. And then there's some people who are like, I will love you from a distance. And, you got to be careful. But yeah, I totally understand. All right, let's see. My family does holiday letters, but I sometimes struggle to write mine post-divorce. I feel you. That is a journey. I would love to know, can you hop on and tell us a little bit more about like your family holiday letters? Like what would be in those?
Yeah, so sorry, I'll sit up. We're chilling. No, they're just like a page, maybe 2, depending on like who writes them. And like all my aunts and uncles always did it. Like I grew up on the East Coast, but like a lot of my friends were family is Minnesota. My mom's side, there's a few in Pennsylvania, just one aunt. So, and even her side did it too. So like at the end of the year, you get all these letters and it just tells what, you know, their immediate family did and, you know, the kids, just like a little journey. And as people got older, then you got other ones. But the real thing is if you don't write one and send it, sometimes you don't get ones back. So it's like you have to kind of, you know, somebody's putting that time in there. And it's usually, I feel like it's usually in Minnesota, it's usually the wife that's doing it or the female is actually doing the writing.
Makes sense. Oh, I know. Women do. I mean, I'm a woman and I know I like to talk. So I'm like, we have all that information, you know, feel more, I don't know, attached to certain things, I guess. I don't know. All right, cool. Family newsletters. All right, the last one is the poetry. So I recently wrote a memoir-ish poetry book. This is not mine. This is not mine at all. And it talked about anxiety and breathing and just like healing. And I put my art in there. I put my poetry. I put prose in there. And it was easier for me to create than just sitting there and just typing, like just a huge type of book, right? And I'm like, poetry is beautiful. It's simple, not intimidating unless you feel like you're not a poet, right? And so this is one called Black Girl Call Home, and it talked about specific things about race, feminism, and identity, queer identity, and how she lived through that. And I love the cover because it's so Black history, Black culture. I'm like, those barrettes, man.
Yes.
I thought it was beautiful. And so was that Brian Pago who talked about the poetry and the zine? That was okay. Tell me, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, like I did the poems I wrote is a lot of personal histories and stuff, just for friends and stuff. And like what I do is I got this out of a book, how to make like little zines from The First Rule of Punk, which is a good book. And at the end, they just show you, it's one piece of paper. You can make little booklets. So I've been doing that for the last couple of years. I got tons of them now. It's
love it.
Just my way of vibing.
I love it. And I teach classes on how to write zines and make zines and stuff like that. I'm all about self-publishing. And so that was one of the things about my bookstore too. It was mostly, you had to be like self-published authors to get on the shelf. Self-published or indie. I was like, yeah, I can go and buy a whole bunch of popular books, but I'm like, I want to give other people an opportunity, the access and platform to share their stuff and, you know, make a little money on the side, right? And so and zines are just, so real quick side story. 1 year I did a 3-state creative retreat. And so I went to Minnesota for 7 days and everything was filled with like art. I was like, it was Prince's birthday that weekend, but it was his post Prince. But I went to parties and I created art and I was just like, oh yeah, whatever. And it was just beautiful. Then I flew to DC and my goal was to collect art and zines. And so I went to indie bookstores, collected zines. Like, my house is a mess. I don't know where my zines are, but I collected so many zines. And then I was just like, I wanted to be in creative spaces. And then I went to New York. I took the bus to New York from DC and then went to indie bookstores and went to all these and grabbed so many zines. And I was just like, yes, this is everything. This is everything. And I really want to promote more zine stuff here, but it just seems like people are really confused about it. And I'm just like, I'm trying to teach y'all, come to my class. But yeah, and it's just, I love zines. Zines are awesome. An awesome way for self-expression. All right. So it is 12:07. You guys want to do an activity? Let's see. All right, we're gonna so stretch, put your arms up, out. All right, now go take a lap outside. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
You know how cold it is here?
What is the temperature there? It's cold here.
24 degrees.
Yeah, I don't know what I did. Oh, I was like, where's my phone? It's right there. like, it's cold here too.
Let me tell it, what, 70?
Nope,
Uh-huh.
49. 49. Yeah, we had freezing weather this week. I was like, hey, well, yeah, close to freezing. I'm like, oh, we hit winter. We're in the winter. But yes. All right. I know I do not like the cold at all. All right. So thinking about like getting like a notebook or a pen, you can brainstorm, jot down, and we can also share this out as well. So we're gonna explore some themes in your life, right? So I want you to think of some themes that you would like to explore in your life. So you can either do this two different ways. You can start off with themes and then find memories based off of that, or you can find the memories and then find the themes from those. So I'm gonna give you about 5 minutes. I was gonna say 7, 5 minutes to kind of think of memories and themes, how they relate. And so I have this picture of string beads or beads on a string. And so you want to think about, the string to be the theme, and then find those memories, which are the beads that relate to that theme. All right. All right, I'll give you about one more minute, and if you want to share, let me know. All right, anyone want to share?
Yeah, I will totally share. So
All right.
like the theme that I had was overcoming, because I feel like that's a pretty consistent like line through my life. And the memories I had, and I go from like really dumb to like really monumental, right? So um from like becoming first chair and band, when the gal who was first chair was like a private lesson bougie kid, and here I am, the new kid in the school. And if you're not familiar with like how that works, normally you have to play the same piece, and your band professor is the one who like ranks you based on skill level. And I just remember being literally the only brown kid in the entire band. And when he announced that I was first chair, and the looks that everyone gave of like, I just upset everyone.
That's
Who is this girl coming in? We don't even know who she is, and she's better than the person who's always been first chair all these years. So like um being the first college grad in my family while having a learning disability, um and finding my voice as like a BIPOC individual in like predominantly white spaces, beating cancer, um it mindfully returning back to rural Minnesota when I left because I felt like I got ran away, and coming back on purpose just to advocate for other people so that no one had to feel what I felt. So those are the memories that I had.
I love that. And so I feel like you should write all those memories down and then share it with your family, like pass it down. Like my mama, you know, was an overcomer. Look what I feel like that's something that your kids need to see and be motivated and empowered by. I think that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Who's next?
I can go. I wrote down two themes at the top of it. I did exploring and survival, but as I wrote, I had way more exploring. So
Okay.
I'll do those. I had like some urban explorating we did around Laurel, Maryland. There's like an old TB campus, and we spent a night there, like exploring and being crazy. There's one where me and my friend John went to a punk show in DC, and we walked around DC and never found the punk show.
Oh,
And so
no.
it's like we're exploring these neighborhoods, and we're a couple white boys from the suburb, but nobody messed with us. We were fine. It was okay. And then we went down to Asheville, North Carolina was a big thing, like where we took trips down to Asheville. And I know I dropped a couple people out there just to go live on the streets in the summertime. And then I did a lot of family trips. So like I went to Minnesota to Las Vegas to help move a friend out to Las Vegas. And then I went Vegas from Maryland to Vegas. So I did that when I was 19. I went cross country to get my brother to a wedding in Minnesota. I drove to Vegas, picked him up and his family, drove to Minnesota, went back to Vegas. So I was so close. I came from Maryland. I went out to California and saw the ocean. And then I returned from that trip with my brother-in-law because I wasn't married. It was my brother's wife's brother. And we became, it's something we still talk about, and if I don't talk to him for a few years, we're still like, that deep bond is there because we went cross country and I brought him back to Maryland. And then during the pandemic, my brother, right before the pandemic hit, he was planning to kind of move because he could work online. He lived in Vegas for 18 years. They just want to get out. So he's going to move to Pennsylvania. And I had agreed to like drive the moving truck. Well, then the pandemic struck and they were still going to move. So I had to figure out, like not going into gas stations, but paying for gas and everything in the height of it. And so I drove from there, visited my nurse friend that lives in Denver to stop for the night, and then to Vegas. And I did straight, So those are a lot of crazy trips. And I don't know. So I had a lot of themes like that.
I love traveling. I love exploring, living your best life. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody else want to share, or you don't have? You don't feel like it. That's all right. All right. So let's dive a little deeper now with those memories and those themes. Like, so what kind of like life lessons? So when you have a memoir, like you want to make sure that you are helping somebody, I guess, a lesson that they should know with these memories. Like, why are you telling these stories? What, message do you want to tell these people who are going to read it? Like, what are those life lessons? And then how is it relatable to others? Like, why is this important for people to read? And then describe the person, the ideal person that would really benefit from these stories. Oops. My dog stinks. I don't know if y'all heard me say that. I was like, you stink. I was talking to my dog. My bad. All right, I'll give you guys about 45 more seconds. All right. I know if one person wants to share, go ahead. And if not, it's all good. It's
I'll share and I'll try to be quick.
all
Um, I guess the themes that I'm most interested in are like what family means and what family legacy means. A lot of my ancestors were homesteaders in North Dakota, so a lot of colonial practice, a lot of land holding, a lot of importance placed on all of that. So what I'd want to write and who I'd want it to reach should be less my own family and more people in other families who feel sort of tied down and beholden to landholding and colonial practices by family. And there are a lot of them in the Midwest that have those sort of histories and those sort of unhealthy roots that keep land and implicitly people sort of tied down by whatever keeps them beholding to passing that on. I'd like to try to find a way to help people become untethered from that.
Love that. That's real. That is real. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes. Thank you for sharing. If I were your teacher and I was like, you need to choose one of these methods, which one would you choose if you were going to write a memoir? And so this is a shortened class. So there are a lot more things that I teach in this class. So, but based off of those 3 that I gave you, so we got poetry, food or recipes, and recipes could be alcohol too. So like I love wine, I love cocktails, like, you know, you could be really creative with that. Desserts, be specific if you want to. And then what did I say? Newsletter. My dog keeps poking me. Newsletter, recipes, and poetry. What would be your go-to? And you can drop it in the chat if you want to. Okay, poems for sure. Yep. Ooh, I like that newsletter for this year. I can dig it. I can dig it. That's what I'm gonna be focusing on with my family is the newsletter. Um, yeah, food is good. Food, yes. I love it. I love it. And I'll be like, ask all your people, your family, like, okay, what's your favorite recipe? And now tell me a story. And drinks, yes. 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 And I'm not drinking until Thanksgiving. So I'm just like, oh, so we'll see how that goes. I like that. I like that satirical, I don't even satirical, I know it's satire, but satirical newsletter. I like it. I think that would be funny. I enjoy that. All right. All right. Well, I appreciate y'all for participating and engaging and talking and doing the activities. Like I really appreciate it. And so y'all are awesome. If you guys have any questions or thoughts, we can chat. And this is how you guys can talk to me or find me. And so I'm working on being a full-time content creator. And so I am doing a project called the Creative Wellness Project, where I'm mixing art and journaling for healing. And so we do different workshops and stuff like that and activities to, tap in. And it doesn't like healing, not necessarily meaning like pain and all that, but just like processing life. Yeah. And so if you want to follow me on there, just, yeah, if you want to, don't feel like you have. But any thoughts, any questions?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time today, especially out of your weekend. I don't know about you all, but I thought that was a wonderful presentation and was definitely like a different way to reframe a lot of these things. Because again, if the conference is overcoming racism and the power of truth telling, I would have never even thought about framing that overcoming through a memoir, that would have never even occurred to me. So thank you so much for sharing that with all of us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.